Why was Father Kapaun exemplary of that?
Well, a lot of different factors make for the formation of a good chaplain, particularly in the Army, where so much is demanded of you to take care of soldiers and families. Obviously, there's the faith background formation that's a responsibility of whoever endorses you, whatever your church or religious denomination tradition might be. Father Kapaun is a great example of that, as one who followed all the steps that as you hear the call of God upon your life and you enter a vocation, in his case the priesthood. He had good mentors, great development in terms of his family and their devotion and their faith, as preparing him as a young man. And then as he heard God's call upon his life and continued to follow that and got support from the church and guidance to include finally the approval and permission from his bishop to be able to become an Army chaplain. It's the same for all Army chaplains, so that's certainly part of it. And then once the Army gets you, they have a lot of training they want to give to you to try and prepare you to be able to most effectively provide religious support to the soldiers and families within our Army. And that's going to require you to go to the Army Chaplain Center and School. In the case of Father Kapaun, he went to Fort Devens for that. And then he had his first assignment down in Georgia, and learned, like all of us when we first started out as battalion chaplains, how hard it is to keep up with the soldiers and do the things they need to do. But that completely prepared Father Kapaun for his ministry that he provided in World War II. Then obviously what happened in the Korean War with his remarkable bravery, and then certainly his stamina and his tenacity to live out his values of his faith in that prisoner of war camp.
So of the 7 chaplains who received the Medal of Honor, almost every single case involved taking care of the wounded. So what role do chaplains have in not only ministering to troops, but also taking care of the wounded?
Certainly, that's one of our 3 core competencies in terms of what we're supposed to do in terms of taking care of soldiers and families. The first one is to nurture the living. And so we lay the foundation and that base where soldiers know they can depend upon us because we are in their lives, in the normal cycle of life, and the events of their faith as well as their events of their military career. And then the second one is to care for the wounded. And obviously we do that both in peacetime with visitation of the hospital. When people are afflicted, they're in time of need. Many times they reach out in their faith and they need that spiritual encouragement from somebody who provides it. Chaplain Kapaun did that both in peacetime and in war. And particularly in the Korean conflict, he was able to, with extreme bravery, run back and forth to collect up the wounded, pray with them, bring them back to a safer position. And he did that his entire service career, and he did that in the POW camp in terms of taking care of them. And then the last core competency is to honor the fallen. And Father was very careful to make sure he respected what it means for us when we leave this world, and those of faith believe we go into a different world. And he epitomized and exemplified what chaplains are supposed to do as we honor the fallen. He was even so careful as to honor the fallen of the enemy, to make sure that their remains were respected. Still a core competency in terms of what we're taught to do on the battlefield. He, in every way, evidenced that in terms of how he acted on the battlefield.
And so in the POW camp, he was known for not only taking care of all the people on his side, but also preaching to them to not be brainwashed by the communists and or by the North Koreans. And so in what ways was he a loyal soldier to the U.S.?
I think in the same way he was prepared before he was in the prisoner of war camp. So if you hear his story and you read some of the letters he wrote both to the bishop and to others in his home church in Pilsen that were praying for him, he talks about his frustration that soldiers were losing their faith and not being true to their convictions, and that concerned him greatly. And so he had classes, and he talked to them as every chaplain tries to, with empathy and encouragement to be true to their faith. That carried on when he got in the prisoner of war camp, so he challenged the other prisoners to live out their faith and to be true to it. He even used the interrogations and some of the classes that his captors tried to convince him and others to turn against their patriotic ideals and their values as soldiers, and certainly their values as persons of faith. He turned that on them in terms of using those lectures as an opportunity to give out the good message. And since he was in some ways restricted on occasion from providing a homily and giving services, he used every opportunity to encourage the troops and being true to their faith and true to the American values and even their soldier values that they've been taught.
I guess that's it. Thank you very much for answering. Oh, okay. One last question was,
Sure.
So there have been 3,465 medals of honor, and I'm wondering why only 7 of them have been chaplains? Is
Well,
there, yeah.
Great question. I think there's probably a good and a bad answer to that one. The good answer is I think chaplains serve many times without glory. And I know Chaplain Kapaun, if he were with us, would feel, as he always exemplified humility, would probably feel a little bit strange about all the honor that's due him. But it's completely due him for what he performed on that battlefield, for the Medal of Honor, and certainly the respect and his legacy that we will learn from as a great chaplain. But chaplains throughout history have languished and served and cared and taken care of troops and soldiers, the memory of what the soldiers carry. So if you think of the reason we know about Chaplain Kapaun is because of the stories of the prisoners of war, his fellow teammates who were liberated. We wouldn't know these stories unless they told them. So the legacy is kept alive by the stories of the soldiers. And that's true for every chaplain that's worth their weight and that makes a difference in the lives of soldiers and families. That legacy goes on, whether it's recognized by the nation, by their denomination or not. That's what really matters. And Father Kapaun was never in doubt that those stories were going to ensure that his legacy was going to be shared with other generations, whether or not the nation recognized him. But it's really a great honor that the nation carries on with that tradition, and it's going to provide that legacy to be in a bigger way.
Well, thank you very much for
Certainly.
answering my questions.
My privilege. Thank you.
So.